Welcome to Baseball Biz. I'm Mark Carbett, your host, and with me today, I have Chris Smith, former baseball player and entrepreneur now in Louisville, man, in Tampa, Florida. So Chris has done a lot of different things. He's been through coming up from high school, which where I went, actually Butler. There was only like 40 years between the difference of us, but something like that. And then I know, Chris, you went to Kentucky Wesleyan. You moved around in some minor league ball. You also had a history with the Yankees, the Blue Jays, the Tigers, and the Nationals. And I said, man, oh man, I look across Baseball Reference and I say, he's done a lot of traveling. I thought I had, but then I look at your record and I say, woof. So help me out, Chris. Welcome to Baseball Biz on deck, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mark. I told you I'd be seeing you again, talking to you again. Great meeting you on the flight and on the way down here to Tampa from Louisville. So that was great, and glad we had a excited talk shop again with you about some baseball. I don't get to do it as much anymore, so I'm glad to be here.
That flight back from Louisville, that was great. Got a great chance to meet you and to talk about a lot of different things. But I was fascinated by your career and where you start out. I mean, again, looking at Butler High School there in Louisville, Kentucky, where you and I both kind of grew up there. And how did you get started? What was your first interest into the game?
Yeah, so I went to high school with a guy named Adam Duval. We graduated in 2006. He's had a great major league career. I'm gonna be honest, we had a lot of guys in our high school team that really pushed each other. I'd say over 3/4 of us went and played college somewhere. But me and Adam, we made a varsity team as sophomores there, which is kind of a big deal at Butler at the time. And then we just kind of fell in love with the work ethic there. We came across some great coaches, and then at the time, I didn't think I was going to even go to college to play college ball, and then kind of being around the team. And I was like, you know what, I can go get an education, get maybe my stuff paid for. So I had a few letters from a couple of D1 schools, a few walk-on opportunities, but inevitably I ended up going to Kentucky Wesleyan, along with 4 other of my guys that were on my team too. Ironically and kind of funny, I'm the only one that made it through the 4 years at Kentucky Wesleyan out of the group.
Yeah. Well, that's nice. I mean, you had a camaraderie of buddies that were into the game, who enjoyed it, and the same, same as you did. But as you said, you were there for 4 years. Well, then there was that next step. I mean, everything that you achieved there in college, but the interest of the game stayed with you. And what happened to take you from collegiate to actually beginning your career in Major League Baseball and baseball in general, for that matter?
Yeah, so whenever I was at Kentucky Wesleyan, when I got there, I was just all baseball. I thought I was a position player all 4 years in college. So I played 2 years in shortstop and 2 years in center field. And my pitching coach, Paxton Gardner, was like, hey, we need some help closing out some games. You think maybe you can get on the bump and try? I was like, yeah, I'll get on the bump, try to throw. I was like, I haven't thrown but a little bit in high school at this point. So I just started coming in straight out of center field and closing games at Kentucky Wesleyan. And honestly, I was getting ready to hang up baseball. We were in our senior weekend, and it just got rained out actually. So I was going to go take the GRE the following weekend, and I'm throwing like a bullpen, like a last one, just in case our weekend didn't get rained out. And Paxton goes, hey, what are you going to do after college? I was like, I'm probably going to go to Louisville, back hometown, get my master's, try to see if I can get into maybe working in the sports world or a general office or general manager office somewhere, something like that with baseball. Well, ended up, he said, hey, if I find you a workout, we go to it. And I said, well, sure. I said, no problem. I said, if you find me one, no problem. So he found me one in Lake Erie, which is right outside Cleveland, Ohio, in a town called Avon, Ohio. And that's where the Lake Erie Crushers are. And they had the Frontier League workout where anybody could go. I think me and my father drove up there, paid $60 to be in the workout. And I think there was like 350 people that showed up.
Wow.
It was like a 2-day workout. And we pulled up, and I got there at like 8 a.m. And then I threw a bullpen at maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So, he's a lot of sitting around, but threw well enough for them to invite me back to the next day to have live BPs. And then again, showed up at like 8 and didn't throw till like 3 that day. And then in that Frontier League workout at the end of it, each team's it's like a draft pick. So each team's required to draft like 2 players out of it. And I ended up getting picked by the Lake Erie Crushers like 6 overall in that thing.
Wow.
So I'm a Kentucky Wesleyan still at the time, and I thought like my baseball career's over. You know, I thought I was just going to this workout to see like, hey, if something came up. I really wanted to be a position player. You know, my passion was playing the field and hitting, even though I didn't have as great as statistics in college to kind of get me to the next level. So pitching was my best avenue. I just threw the ball a little bit harder, and yeah, then I got picked up by them, and that's kind of how the journey began.
Wow. Well, I mean, and I always wonder, you're talking about from the time you got there to the time you're actually throwing. I always wonder about how can a pitcher keep that arm, warm, especially if you're trying to loosen up before you're going to go out there onto the mound. That in itself seems like that'd be quite a challenge.
Yeah, well, I will say adrenaline's a hell of a drug. So, like, just getting on the mound, I think, and knowing that I was going to be having an opportunity for professional baseball at the time, was just gave me. It didn't matter where I was going to be. I was going to be excited to be there, loose, ready to go. So, like I said, adrenaline was definitely carrying the way there. So, I think it helped out.
So you were both in the Frontier League and in the Pecos League, right?
Yes, yeah. So that team, the Lake Erie Crushers, that ended up signing me out of. And by the way, I was still finishing up college. I had to go back to my college and tell all my professors, like, "Hey, I got to leave to go to spring training. It starts," and I still had like a week and a half, 10 days left of classes. So I had to work out an agreement that I could do everything kind of remote while I was with Avon and actually staying with the host family. And gosh, they're still instrumental in my life. Like they were my first host family I ever had, Doug and Darlene Ormston, and they followed me throughout my whole career. So I got to give a shout out to them too. But they're a big proponent and keep on pushing me. But yeah, Lake Erie Crushers signed with them, made it out of camp, and then lo and behold, I threw 1 inning for them. I gave up a grand slam, and it was after like a broken bat hit. Our shortstop made an error, but they gave it like a hit at the time, and then boom, grand slam. And I walk off the field, and Chris Steinborn's my pitching coach, and he slaps me on the leg, and he's like, "Hey, welcome to pro ball. And you're gonna be okay." And at this point, I'd only thrown in probably like in front of like 150 people. And then I go to independent ball, and this is like the Lake Erie Crushers were like in the championship series the year before, so there was a lot of hype around the team. And whenever I initially started the season, Mazzarelli was our manager and said, "Hey, Chris, don't worry about it. Like, you're not going to go in these pressure situations. Like, we're going to ease you in." I came in the 10th inning of a tie ball game.
Oh, bro.
In the second game. And so talk about adrenaline being a hell of a drug. That was insane. Just going from 150, and then there was like 4,000 people there. But for me, it was like it felt like the World Series times 10 at that point. So,
oh, yeah. I'm sorry. No pressure. Let's just bring you in the 10th inning here and see if you can wrap things up for us. Oh man.
Yeah, grand slam, and then the following series we were going to Kalamazoo. And I'll never forget, I walked off the field and I was walking to my locker, and a guy named Andrew Davis was on our team, and he was like my locker mate. And all I had hanging from my laundry loop was my underwear and socks. And I was like, dang, where's, and I was like thinking I was packing up to go on my first like road trip, my first pro road trip. And I'm like looking for my bag. My bag is gone. And at this point, I thought they were playing a rookie joke. And then it took me like 1 second, and I was like, man, I'm going to get released. And then, I took a shower, came back out, and Maz pulled me in the office and kind of let me know that I didn't have the experience to kind of be where they were at. Because in independent ball, it's like, if you're not helping them win, it's very cutthroat. So that is one thing about independent ball, is not having experience is it's tough to get in and stay. And not having any experience really on the mound under 13 innings in college kind of was the reason why my first exit was kind of out of there.
Ouch.
But didn't stop there.
No. And like I said, independent ball, it's either show, you can show them what you got right then and there, or you're gone. A lot of when people think about minor leagues and some of the other development leagues, they're looking at how that talent is going to get where they want it to be. And so On your journey after that experience, where did it go? What happened next?
So I went home and I worked out for the Evansville Otters and had a pretty good workout. And then they called me about a week later and just said, "Yep, we're not going your way." And then that was the conversation that we had. So then I thought baseball just wasn't for me. So then I started working at a gym called Urban Active, and it's like a LA Fitness. Like, and it was right around the corner from my house. I was became a fitness consultant over there, and then uh, was starting to make a little bit of money, I guess, and then like feel like I had a grown up job. And then that team, ironically, that I threw that one inning against, the Traverse City Beach Bums, they called me in October and said they wanted me to come to a workout for them in November. And I hadn't picked up a baseball in like 5 or 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
I was getting ready to actually be a freshman baseball coach at Butler High School, and I was like helping them out because I was still wanted to be involved with the game, and even if I was going to be out of it. Well, then everything kicked back into high gear. I got a pitching coach by a guy named Gene Walter. He worked with me for like a month while I was working at Urban Active. Like, our playroom was shut down, so I brought a pop up net, and I had to be in like dress suit, like slacks and all that, and dress shoes. And on the lunch break, I'd throw 100 baseballs into the net to get my arm in shape because it was the only time I could really throw because I was working like 50-hour work weeks at that time. Like,
Wow.
so while thinking, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna go up to this workout. Well, I went up to the workout with the Traverse City Beach Bums, and then they ended up signing me from there, inviting me to spring training. So that was like the next step after I thought baseball was done. So, yeah.
Well, Chris, I could see almost at that point saying, "Oh yeah, well, thanks for calling me, but I'm kind of moving on with my life right now." But that wasn't you. You went ahead and said, "Well, there's still another opportunity here. It's something that meant enough to you that you weren't going to just put baseball completely to the side." So, did was there? I guess that bug was still inside you, man. It was still buzzing around, saying, I'm in this game. As long as there's an opportunity, I'm going to play."
Yeah, I mean, I think my parents too were just like, if I didn't have them like by my side and like helping me, to motivate me at the time, like I was still living at home, trying to still figure out my ways. I was still only 22 at the time. So I got out of college at 21. So I had a 4-year degree, still trying to figure out kind of what I wanted to do. Still, I always had the passion to play. Like it was just there, I love the game more than anybody. And I was just excited to hear like, hey, you always hear that phrase, like, if you got a uniform on your back, you got a shot. And like, I really took that personal along the way. And just to get my foot in the door, like, I just wanted to play a few more years of independent ball at that point. Like, I didn't have any aspirations. Like, I was like, oh, if I get signed by an auxiliary ball team, like, what a dream. I can tell my son or my kid that I was a Yankee at one point. But like, that's the goal and the vision continued to change along the career path for sure. And it just like once I got there, it was like I was never satisfied. It's like I wanted to see what the next step was. And whenever I got there, I knew I could be there, but it was also like a huge, like there was a big turning point in the independent ball that kind of changed my mindset, which we'll probably get to here in a minute. So there's a lot.
So when you walked up there with the beach bums and you got there on the mound, what kind of environment was it for you then? Well, I mean, were there people that had already been there for some period of time, and was it welcoming? Was it cool? How did it come? How did it feel going back into it like that?
I mean, it's like spring training, but they brought in 43 pitchers for 12 spots,
Wow.
so it's extremely competitive, and then you start getting along with a few guys along there that have been in the game a little bit, like I always try to gravitate towards people that had experience because like you're gonna learn the most from those people. Even in independent ball, somebody that's been in there for 3 or 4 years, if I could pick up a few things at that stage of my career, I was like, I'm gonna talk to these guys. So just kind of staying connected with them and trying to just learn the rope and just keep my head down. Honestly, like I was just excited to be there again. Like I remember they asked me if I wanted to be a starting pitcher or reliever, and I was like, I'll be a starting pitcher, I'll be a reliever, whatever I need to do to be on the roster. And I remember we had to run like 20 poles after like throwing a couple innings, and it was just like brutal. Greg Langman was our manager and pitching coach all at the same time, but Yeah, that was another kind of, I made the roster on that team after spring training, and it was like a little bit of a surprise because of like how much competition was there. But I was short lived there too. I had 2 appearances with them. I think once on like the 8th game of the year, and the second one was on like 10 games after that. So I had about I had 2 appearances in between like 12 games. So and then I remember my parents were actually at the game and in Gateway. We're getting ready to head back to Traverse City for like a 16-hour bus ride. And
Wow.
I told them, I was like, hey, I think I'm going to get released whenever we get back. I just had that feeling.
Yeah.
And as soon as we got back to Traverse City, I dropped my bags off at my locker and got the tap on the shoulder again. Was like, hey, uh, and then they asked me. They were bringing some affiliated guys. If you can make it past June in independent ball, like, or you're usually pretty good for the rest of the summer. But once all those affiliated ball guys, especially after spring training and stuff like that, also like once those guys get released, they go into independent ball and take up some roster spots from like inexperienced guys, and I was still that inexperienced guy. So that was my short tenure with the Traverse City Beach Bums.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, obviously you grew a lot more than after that, but it was sounds like a series of introductions of saying, "Hey, would you like to come over here at least try out?" So after the Beach Bums, what was the next step? Where did you go from there, Chris?
Went back home. I went back, started working at Urban Active again, like as like a job that they
Right.
kind of said I could come back and do. And then I was planning like my first July 4th weekend with my friends, like something I haven't done in like years because of baseball. So I was at that point, I thought I was moving on. And then a guy by the name of Keith Esseray, yeah, was a manager of a team called the White Sands Pupfish. This is when the Pecos League came calling. And at that point, Keith was like, "Hey, I can't offer you a lot of money, but I can offer you a little bit of money to come out here and play, and you can play some professional baseball." And I was like, "All right, well, how do I get out there?" And I was like, "I'll be out there tomorrow." It was I think a Sunday, and I was like, "All right, I think I found the earliest flight was Tuesday," so I was like, "I'll be out there Tuesday." And I'm telling you, this Pecos trip, this short 4 weeks. I'm telling you, I could write a book on just this short 4 weeks. But this is where my fear of flying came from, right here, Mark. I'm going to tell you.
Oh,
So I get on a flight to Phoenix, Arizona, and then from Phoenix to Alamogordo, New Mexico, which is like kind of a really, really small town. And to play for a team called the White Sands Pupfish. Well, I get on a plane that could probably fit in my office. It was like a little matchbox plane,
ouch.
and there's 2 pilots on me, and I'm the only one on the plane. And then they weigh my baggage. We don't even get above the mountains, and we're heading straight into these black clouds.
Oh, sweet mother.
And all of a sudden, like they they're holding on and looking at each other, like as the plane's like going crazy, and it's going like up and down, and then like the wind radar is like red and yellow, and they're like looking at each other, and they slide the curtain back, so like then I couldn't see up. I was so yeah, so I had a very very like scary flight, and the guy turns around and he was like 60 minutes, and it was the longest 60 minutes I'd ever been on a plane. And I thought I was going to be dead in the middle of the desert, and no one's ever going to find me.
Oh,
This is on
good.
my way to Alamogordo, New Mexico, in the Pecos League. And when we landed that plane, we were landed this way, and as soon as we hit the runway, it straightened out. And I've never been so happy to be on land. And that was like the beginning of my fear of flying, to be honest.
Jeez. Well, you were just showing me it's probably like about a 15-degree angle or more. I can't even begin to imagine with the wings being up well, one side more than the other like that. And
I'm telling you, man.
especially in a small little plane like those. I've
Well,
been in some
matchbox
small
car.
planes, but never, never, ever, ever in that kind of weather.
Yeah.
So well, I'm glad you made it, brother.
Yeah, me too. Definitely. 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 So yeah, so then I get to Alamogordo, and they drop me off at a Motel 6, and I'm waiting for them to finish up practice. They're having practice before the season starts. The season hasn't even started yet. Um and then Keith comes and lets me in my room, and the room is like lived in. It's not like a new room. It's like, I guess, like a revolving baseball room for people that come in and live there. Anyway, so I'm like picking up the place, and then I get a knock on the door at like 10 o'clock from a guy named Ryan Kopp, and he's from Ohio State, shortstop, and he was like, "Hey, I'm out here to work out with the team tomorrow." And I was like, "Oh," I was like, "I'm supposed to sign a contract tomorrow. Like, I guess I'm working out too." And we were sitting there. We went to McDonald's. And we were like, "What is going on?" And then, literally at 2 o'clock, the shortstop Cody Kaufman knocks on the door. He's like, "Hey, can I crash in here in the?" He's like, "The baseball house doesn't have any AC." And this is all before I've even stepped foot on the field.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, what did I get myself into? So then, anyways, the next day, found out I had to buy my own baseball pants. Like, and I'm like, so like, and I had to go to some mom and pop shop that had no like baseball pants that even fit me. I looked like a clown out there with how big my pants were. It was so bad. So I show up, and in our clubhouse is like up in a press box, and there's like one bench this way, and then like half of like, it looks like a dog ate half the other bench like the other way, and that was our clubhouse. So it was like that was a professional Pecos League, and that was that's very eye-opening. But and then I walk up to Keith, and Keith goes, "Hey Chris," he goes, "Here's your contract." And I open it up and I read my contract, and it says for $0.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm gonna need a minute. So then I walk downstairs, and I'll never forget. I'm like sitting out and looking out in the mountains on the bleachers, and I call my parents, and I'm like, "Mom, Dad," I was like, "I'm literally about to sign a professional baseball contract for $0." And my mom and dad was like, "Well, you got to have experience if you want to play baseball." Like, that's what they all say, is that you got to put up numbers if you want to do it. Like, this is what you got to do. And I was like, "All right, I'm going to do it." So I went up there, I signed it, and I said, "Hey, I thought I was going to earn some money." They were like, he goes, "Hey," he said, "relievers make $50 a week, starters make $70 a week." So I had one relief appearance, and I said, "You know what? Make me a starter. I need that. I want that extra $20 a week." And they do this thing called a pass the hat. So if you had over 9 strikeouts, then you got to pass the hat. Well, so my first time ever pitching in the Pecos League, my first time ever being a starter, I went 9 innings. I threw like 135 pitches, and I had 13 punch outs. And I gave up one hit, and it was a solo homer. And yeah, so then that was like the beginning of my starting. Then that's when I became kind of a starting pitcher out in the Pecos League, and I found some success there. So instead of being like kind of like a long relief guy, I started becoming a starter, and that's whenever I started kind of, I guess, making a little noise.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, with 13 punch outs out there, and you're having to work with what almost must seem like a circus atmosphere, trying to find pants the right size.
Oh man, crazy stories for days about that place.
Oh, and folks, I want to remind you all, when you think about minor leaguers, what these folks are going through. So if you ever think everybody's playing baseball is getting paid a decent salary, it ain't so.
Especially if you ever players drove the vans out there. Like, we had separate vans that we had to make sure was even gassed up. We had some of the players on the team paid money just to be on the team. And it helped fund the team. And it helped, like, it paid for their living expenses, but it helped actually pay like player salary. So after my first week, I was making $70 a week. So I made the list. But
yeah. Well, I'm glad you were getting something, especially if you're in contrast to those other guys having to put up some cash. So they were paying her salary so they could be on the team.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, but at the same time, it was an opportunity for me. And once I got out there and just played, it was just baseball. And like, when you just get out there, and some of those guys I played with, it was the most fun baseball that I think I played. Just not just because I was playing well, but because everybody out there was doing the same grind I was.
Yeah.
So everybody was in different like stages of their career. You could tell like guys were like, pretty much they knew they were at the end of it. They just wanted to play a little longer. There was only a few like kind of hungry guys, that you could tell wanted to kind of maybe try to the next level. But like, it was cool because everybody was just at the same grind, and just the camaraderie that you get out of that in itself is pretty cool.
Were there people that you played with in the Pecos League that you saw as you advanced through your career that you saw them also elevate?
Not really, to be honest. There's not too many individuals in the Pecos League that was getting picked up in affiliated ball. Really, there was a one guy on my team that got picked up by the Diamondbacks, but he ended up going like extended spring training or something like that and got hurt, and they ended up releasing him pretty quick. Um, and then I don't really know too many other guys from the Pecos League that got picked up. I know there are some, but to be honest, like once I got out of that league, I kept moving forward. I got back into the Frontier League. Like if you can get out of that league, then like and move over to like another league, then that's what you do. So, um, so yeah. So then the Washington Wild Things. That's whenever I moved over to them in 2011. And from the Pecos League. So I went from Traverse City to the Pecos League to the Washington Wild Things in 2011.
Yeah, I was checking earlier. I was looking online here with the Observer Reporter and an article by Chris Dugan. He published something here on May 8th, 2022, choosing a Wild Things dream team. And not surprisingly, Chris, you were on there. So he said, Chris Smith, Washington's best pitcher during some lean years, 2011 through 2012. Smith was 9 for 6 with a 2.92 ERA and 2 shutouts in 2012 and went on to Toronto. So that sounds like some exciting times while you were there. What was something that marked that time for you? What was it that said, yeah, I see myself doing well here? I mean, there wasn't really development still there. They were expecting you to be that guy.
Yeah, I mean, when I came over in 2011, we were on the cusp of like making the playoffs, and for me, I was like in that kind of realm of still trying to prove myself even to that league. It's like, okay, I checked the box off. Okay, I can compete with the Pecos League, and it's like, okay, I can do that. I can move on to the next level, and I felt like the Frontier League was like the big next level for me. And I got there, and I'll never forget it. Oh my God, I think it was like my second start there. I think I may have mentioned this to you on the plane. My parents were at attendance. By the way, they were at the attendance for most of all my worst outings that I ever had in my career. But I'm going to leave that to the side. But this one in particular, so I'm starting the first six. All of the first six guys all got on base and they all scored.
Oh, Lord.
And I'm looking over at the bench, and my pitching coach and my manager Darren Everson at the time, he's with the Rockies right now. Um, I'm like looking over at him, like this is like my second start. I'm getting squeezed on everything, broken bat hits, and then I give it like a double, and it's like, damn, like bad luck too. Well, Darren Everson walks out to the mound. This is the biggest turning point, like one of my biggest turning points in the career. And he stands over top of me, and he's a giant human being. And he stands on top of the mound, and I stand off the back. And he said a few choice words to me, and he was telling me, hey, you deserve to be here. We got nobody else in the pen. Like, you're it. Like, we need you to suck it up. Like, you need to figure it out. Stop looking at the bench. We're not helping you out. You're not coming out of the game. And I was just like, yes, sir. Okay. All right, I'll get back on that thing. I'll do my hardest. But no, but at the same time, I've always been someone that's liked when people like get into my ass. Like whenever I played baseball, like, okay, now it's like time to turn it on. And it did. Actually, I made a shift on the mound from one side to the other. And I went 7 innings and gave up one more base runner by an error. And went from everybody kind of cussing me out in Washington to I got a standing ovation on that night walking off, because it was a huge turning point, because it was like, we ended up staying in the game. And I think we ended up losing by one, but we got to stay in the game. And I think that was a big point where it's like, okay, I can do this here too. I can do this.
Yeah, I could see where that could actually raise you up. And it's about having the right personalities and right coaches and saying the right things at the right time.
Yeah.
Sometimes inspiring, sometimes critical, and maybe a little bit of both. So, well, who was that gentleman again?
Darren Everson. He was my manager at the time, and like I said, he was a big proponent of like helping me believe that I like should be there, and beyond,
Wow.
and my pitching coach too at the time. He was with the Brewers. Gosh, why am I drawing a blank about him? Dewey, Mark Dewey. He was also another guy. He used to write up these reports. I'll never forget him. I still have. I saved some memorabilia stuff that like meant stuff to me along the way, and I might still have some reports somewhere in one of these boxes of like just the stuff that he wrote, and it's like it would be like encouraging, but it would also critique like how you pitched, what you can improve on, and his professionalism like really helped me like, okay. And and then I got in the starting rotation, and then that's kind of helped me out too. But the thing that kind of stunk is those guys are such good coaches. The next year when I re-signed with the Washington Wild Things, Mark went on to be with the Brewers and Darren moved on to be with the Rockies. So I came back to new coaches, but I also before that year ended in 2011 or 2012 or yeah 2011, Darren set me up with a workout with the Tampa Bay Rays actually.
Ah,
And I went down to a workout with the Tampa Bay Rays. I drove 17 hours down to Port Charlotte, and I did awesome. I threw so damn good. Like I faced like 5 hitters. I struck out 4 of them, and I drove down with my Uncle Ted. And then on the way back, I was like, I'm gonna be a Tampa Bay Ray. Like I just
yeah.
did really well. And I got back home and I'm painting the fence with my dad, like maybe a week and a half later. The scout that called me down goes, "Hey, Chris, thanks for coming down. But we're not gonna go your way. Thanks." And then I was like, "Do I get an evaluation?" He goes, "We keep our evaluations internally. Good luck." Boom, and hung up on me. And that was it. And I was like, damn. I was like, what more? I was like, I just wanted to know what like more I could have done in the workout at the time. So that
Yeah.
was like, damn, that really like drove me to like it kind of made me mad, but it made me like get that drive to go, okay, well, I just did bad, like pretty damn good, but it wasn't good enough. So I gotta go figure out a way to be better. So that was a big driving point too.
Yeah, striking out 4 of 5 down there in Charlotte.
Yeah.
It's, and no explanation for a pitcher who's achieving that. Come
Yeah,
on,
it was.
boys and
I
girls. I
mean, it
mean,
was like probably throwing like 90, 92 at the time, So like, and I was 23, or I was 22. I was 22 at the time, so I don't know. Like, I guess they were looking for a little bit more of a dominant rough, or they were signing just kind of one other guy. But yeah, I guess 90, 92 at the time wasn't what they were looking for.
jeez and
But
crackers.
it's
Okay.
okay though. Hey, like I said, it just a
Well,
checkpoint in the story.
yeah, put a little more fire in your belly too after that, man,
Yeah, yeah.
to go after it even more. So what was the next step? I mean, after such a positive idea about what was going to happen there, what did you do next?
Well, the Wild Things re-signed me. They re-signed me for 2012, and I came back, and we had a completely different coaching change. Even a little bit of different in the front office. And Chris Bando was the new manager, and he used to be a former like Indians manager. And I ended up making the team through spring training with them. And even though I did well the year before, I still like I came across a list that like said that I was on a bubble list, and I was like, dang, I was like, I got to really get after this. So that was honestly like where I really, really realized. I mean, I knew in past like you got to show up to spring training and be ready, but like spring training is no longer to get ready for season. It's to earn a spot on a team, and that was really like eye opening. Like it doesn't matter about the year that you had before, what you did at the end of the year. It's about what you're doing for me now. And that spring training was really eye opening for me going down. Like even though I had a good year thinking, oh, maybe I'll have a roster spot, like I was still on the chopping block. So that was another thing that kind of kept me locked in during spring training. Spring training was my World Series, because that was me to try to earn a spot on a team. But ended up making the team and doing really well that year in 2012. Like I think I was like third in the league in strikeouts, but nobody really came knocking. I threw 130 innings and had a really, really good year. Our team ended up not making the playoffs, but came across some really good guys. And I remember sitting down with Chris Bando towards the end of the year, and I said, "Hey, I've heard winter ball really opens up some doors for people. Do you have any winter ball connections?" And I was thinking more about the Latin countries, and he goes, "I don't have anybody with Latin countries," he said, "but I do have somebody in Australia." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, let's do it. Like, can you hook me up with him?" And one of the most prolific Australian baseball players of like kind of Australia, hits me up and he's like, "Hey, you want to come out here and play in Australia? We need you to play in the men's league for us and kind of prove yourself a little bit before we get out to the ABL. But we'd like for you to come out here." So I said, "Sure, sign me up."
Oh gosh, Chris. I mean, you've been all across, crisscrossing the U.S. at this point, and now
Yeah.
you're going to leave the continent completely for a place that's what, like 22-hour differential or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, it's. I think whenever I was over there, it was like, I don't know, 16 to 18 hours at some point. So
Jeez.
it's a life change.
I mean, I knew it was almost a day. I didn't know what it was. So 16 to 18 hours differential.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, the human body has to adapt to something like that. The first few times out, what was that like? I mean, what day is it? But geez, what time of day is it?
Yeah. So whenever I got out there, I land and David's like, "Don't go to sleep." And it's in the morning. And this is right after a 16-hour flight from Dallas to Brisbane. And I land and he's like, "Hey, you just got to stay up all day. Like, that's how you're going to get on the cycle. Like, that's how you're going to be okay." And I was like, "All right." And I stayed up and they were in the process of moving their printing company from one place to another. So that's what I did that first day I was in Australia, is I helped kind of the Nielsen family move all their stuff from one place to another. And then that's whenever I met all the men's league I was going to be playing with, the Pine Hills Lightning, and that's where I met like the little men's league I was going to play in to kind of show. And that was kind of eye opening. It felt like I was taking a step down, honestly, but at the same time, I understood like these guys don't know who I am, you know. So like for me to prove myself, I had to throw in that to kind of show them who I was. So it's another 50 innings in that men's league.
Okay, I got to step back here again about that flight. 16 hours from Dallas to Brisbane.
Yeah.
After your previous experience,
Yeah.
I mean,
I think
how the heck
after
did you survive?
Yeah, I think after that I was just like only scared of like small planes, because big planes I felt like they were fine, you know. But yeah, because you don't feel anything once you're in the air for that long. It's just like, and trust me, I mean, I would take some Advil PMs and try to sleep a little bit along the way. So but it was a very long flight,
Jeez. So you've got to prove yourself again to people who have no idea what you've done before. At least you're just on paper. They don't know you.
Yeah.
And so that must, again, I can see why they would feel like a step back and say, "Come on, guys, really?" But that also has to go that far. That has to go that perseverance on your own part, saying, "I'm not going to let these," I don't want to say attitude, this approach push me back in my own ideas about what I need to achieve. So that says a lot for you about you and what you wanted to get done.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, anywhere I had to go, you have to prove yourself, especially like to a new crowd, you know. And it's like, took that like spring training, like, hey, you're always on the bubble. And like I said, I knew these people didn't know me, so yeah, I mean, but I got in, I meshed with them really well. Some of the nicest guys, I still talk to those guys, you know, like that I came across. Like Australia might have been one of my most favorite baseball memories that I had. Like honestly, I was there for like probably 5 to 6 months, and it was kind of a dream come true in baseball over there. And also like being able to tour the country and being kind of seeing their culture and how they are over there. It was just, I don't know. It was just, I had a terrific time, and they were very welcoming over there. But the men's league was kind of where it started. I threw my first no-hitter there. Yeah. And I was like in like the maybe sixth or seventh inning, and they knew I was going to be on the ABL team already. But I was like, this was like a prep game. I was like still throwing, keep my arm ready. Well, then I was like in the seventh inning, and the manager's getting ready to pull me. And I was like, "Hey," I was like, "Do you mind if I pitch until I give up a hit?" I was like, "I've never been like this far in a game without." And he goes, "Sure." He's like, "Mate, you hadn't given up a hit yet?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Oh, sure, no problem." Kept me in there. And then, yeah, I got a no hitter, and it was like nobody really celebrated. Really, nobody really understood. We were kind of just like shaking hands, and then afterwards we were having a beer after the game, and one of the players looked up and was like, "Smitty, did you throw a no hitter today?" And I was like, "Yes." Yeah, I was like, "Yeah, I did." He's like, "Oh, cheers, mate, cheers." And then that was pretty much the celebration of
Chris.
the no hitter. But hey, it was cool. It was. It's pretty cool.
Oh, I know, man. They call them personal hitters these days because we count them if one guy pitches for 6 innings and you got three other pitchers come behind him. But
Yep.
no,
Yep.
that's outstanding. And and I love it too. If I'm watching broadcasts, they won't even they try not to breathe the word no hitter.
Oh, I know.
They'll say everything around it because they're afraid they're going to jinx it. But it's celebrated so much in this country, and it must have felt strange to see where, oh, Chris, hey, way to go. You
Yeah.
thumbs up.
Yeah, no, it's so funny too because after I made the ABL, I was pitching a little bit there, and I was in the hunt for like the strikeout record out there. And whenever we were at Brisbane, like in our home team, we had an announcer that would literally do a play-by-play out loud to the crowd. So he would start counting down like till like the strikeout record, and then it was like, and then I had to strike out the very last guy of the game in order to get the record. And he was counting down every single pitch. He's only two strikes out, mate. He's only one strikeout. Oh, and then it's like, and I struck him out on a 3-2 pitch, and then I broke the ABL strikeout record, which was cool because my mom and dad was there. And then actually, I went to breakfast. I think I might have mentioned this to you on the plane too. I went to breakfast with the Astros scout before then, and I was having a really good ABL season at the time. I was leading the ABL in strikeouts and ERA, and then at this point I was like about 200 innings in, on the year, because I did 130 in independent ball, and then I did another 50 in the men's league, and then at that point I was probably about 20 or 30 innings in, and then my forearm kind of started flaring up a little bit, but I was throwing okay, and the Astros were like, hey, just throw one more good game for us. And then I had that strikeout game, and I thought I was going to be a Houston Astro. And then that guy came to me the next day and sat down and was like, hey, we can't sign you until after extended spring training. So I was like, all right, well, maybe affiliated ball isn't going to happen, after this kind of long journey. But then he said, hey, he goes, but I do have a guy with the New York Yankees that I'm going to send your stuff over to, a guy named John Wadsworth.
I'm sorry. Did you say the New York Yankees?
Yeah. The New York Yankees. He said he was going to send it over to a scout out there about a guy named John Wadsworth. And I said, awesome. I was like, I appreciate it. And at this time, my forearm was flaring up a little bit. And the Yankees called me and they said, hey, they called me like a week later and they said, hey, we've been looking at everything. We want you to get an MRI. I got an MRI on my forearm, came back and everything was like fine at the time. And they said, okay. And they called me and they said, how would you like to be a New York Yankee? And then that's kind of whenever I signed over there.
Wow.
With them.
That's a heck of a thing, man. Signing with a dynasty like that. I mean, when you're first time you're actually getting into, the major league system,
mm-hmm.
and had one, the Astros looking at you, and two, the Yankees signing you. That must have been a very exciting time in your life. I don't think I could have caught my breath.
Yeah, I mean, the phone call to my parents, that was kind of cool. It was like it was almost as cool as like the debut call. You know what I mean? Like to me, because it was like just a grind to even get to be able to say that I'm going to be able to put on an affiliated ball uniform. Like I said, I didn't care if it was a Cincinnati Reds. I didn't care if it was Milwaukee Brewers. I didn't care who it was. Like I was like hunting to be like able to tell my kids, like I put on an affiliated ball uniform, like, and I was only an independent ball guy. But then once again, here we go. Like once I got to the Yankees, it was like, once I got there, I was like, okay, now it's like, I know I can do this and compete with these guys, but I got hurt my first year.
We've been talking with Chris Smith, and this is part one of an interview with him about the journey of a baseball player from high school to the pros. And we're going to come back with another episode here shortly. You'll be able to find out. And again, what's Mr. Chris Smith. And right now, he's also in Tampa, just like myself. He's currently, I believe, a real estate executive with the Compass Group. Is that accurate, Chris?
Yes, sir. That's it.
Okay. Okay, great. And you all can find him there with a little search, or is there, how else can they reach out and find you, Chris?
You can find me on Instagram. C_Smitty7, I believe, is my Instagram. I have to double check that. I'm on social media, but I'm not, I don't participate. Yeah, C_Smitty7. You can follow me on there. I'm just a real estate advisor down here in Tampa. So if I can help anybody with the real estate needs too, it's kind of my new realm. And finding out that a lot of stuff through baseball has been helping me in real estate. So if I can help anybody along the way, I'd love to help.
All right. Well, once again, it's Chris Smith was here today on Baseball Biz on Deck, and that's part one of our interview. So we'll come back here later, and we will have part two about his adventures as he advances, moving on with that contract with the Yankees. Well, thank you again for joining us today here on Baseball Biz on Deck. And you can find us on just about everywhere, whether it's on Twitter. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and 100 others I can't think of, iHeartRadio. So thank you all again for joining us here today, and we'll talk with you again real soon. Special thanks to XTakeRUX for the music Rocking Forward.